Good morning. Several years ago now, I had a really neat opportunity provided by the Lilly Foundation. They are always trying to find ways to help promote improvements in theological understanding among people. And they had the perception, and I think correctly so, that quite often Protestants are talking to Protestants about what are things that are working in your churches, and Catholics talk with Catholics about what works in their churches. But so often Protestants and Catholics don't come together in dialogue to find out where they stand, what's working in their churches. So they tried to provide that opportunity. They chose 3 different sites around the country, and then they invited different key religious leaders to come together and to be able to dialogue. I was invited to be a part of that, and I was invited to go to Boston. There's a lot of good, strong Catholics in Boston, and I was excited about going. When I got there and we sat down in this room with a number of us people, we began discussing, and it became clear to me that the Catholics in Boston actually had many progressive ideas, and they didn't care for Pope John Paul's theological stance. Pope John Paul was the Pope at the time. The Catholics in Boston were saying, can priests marry? And the Pope said no. Can women be priests? And the Pope said no. What about contraceptives? And the Pope said no. Can there be autonomy for the Catholic Church in America? And the Pope said no. They did not like his stance on all these different issues. But what I also found was they had a great love and respect for Pope John Paul. And that's because they loved him as a man and his genuine spirit to love. I didn't realize that Pope John Paul was the first pope to ever go and put foot in a synagogue. Pope John Paul was the first pope to ever call Jews our older brother. He was the first pope to ever go to the Wailing Wall and there to put a prayer in the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. He was the first pope to say, "We failed you in the Holocaust. We could have and we should have done more. We failed you. Can you forgive us?" He was the first pope to ever put foot in a mosque. He was the first pope to speak up and say in the 1940s, when so many 100,000 Palestinians were moved off their land that they had been living on for 1900 years, well, we should have spoken up. We did not do anything, and what happened to you was wrong. I'm sorry. Can you forgive us? No, he was the first pope to speak up and apologize for the Crusades in the 11th and 12th centuries. Crusades that harmed so many Jews and so many Muslims. He was the first pope to speak up and to actually apologize to Galileo. You see, it's about 350 years ago, Galileo had found out and been able to prove that Copernicus was right, that the earth went around the sun, and the earth was not the center of the universe where the sun went around it. No, he was able to prove that. And when he proved it, well, it was the church who said, "Bite your tongue. Don't you say that. The earth is the center of the universe, and if you try to prove anything different, we will burn you and your books at the stake." So Galileo was put under house arrest. His books were burned. It was 350 years later with Pope John Paul that he came out and said, "You were right. We were wrong. I'm sorry. Can you forgive us?" So often we tend to think that apologizing, admitting that we were wrong, and asking for forgiveness is a sign of weakness. But I saw that's not the case at all. It's a sign of strength. It's a sign of strength when you are willing and able to stand up and say, "I was wrong. I made a mistake. We made a mistake. I'm sorry. Can you forgive me?" This week, maybe decide to show strength. Rather than always justifying all the things that you say and you do and what happens, maybe this week, in that spirit of Christ, you and I can speak up and be willing to use the words, "I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Can you forgive me?" It'll go a long way in helping us to love our neighbors. Have a good one.